Well, you made it. This is the final video in our Marketing Basics video series. We've talked about understanding some just core concepts, the value of integrated plans, and then we broke down research and objectives and strategy. And now we're at the end of that integrated plan process where we're talking about creating tactics and then going ahead and establishing some metrics to measure the success of doing that. We know that lots of students love to jump right into tactics because, as consumers themselves, they're used to thinking in terms of tactics. But in case you haven't picked up on this idea in the previous videos, it's all about an integrated nature of the plans. And so it's good to always be thinking about how do we make connections between all of these different elements. The tactic does not exist in a vacuum. If it does, you're probably not doing great marketing. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to teach in our classes is make sure that you are thoughtful and have considered how it serves a larger picture and really attends to the client's needs. Okay, so how can we do this? The first thing is, as you're writing out each tactic, you need to think, how does it connect back to the strategy and objectives? If you came up with a really robust strategy statement, it shouldn't be too hard to think about what tactics are going to do a really good job of supporting that story, which ones maybe don't align with that so well. It's not just thinking about how does it match the strategy statement, though, but if you are really coming up with an integrated plan and you're really kind of thinking about how do all these different pieces work together, you're going to want to consider what the other tactics are, and you want to think about how do they complement each other, and you don't want to be doing too much of repetitive work. You want to think about different ways of reaching that same target audience, with them all laddering up to your planned strategy. You want to think about that integrative nature of the campaign throughout the presentation. So as you're talking about tactics, you're not just explaining, oh, hey, let's do a TV ad, oh, let's do a billboard, but you're explaining how does that TV ad do a good job of maybe leading to the website. And on the website, it shares a story that's consistent with what you see in print ads and how that matches some of the visual style of what you see in the banner display ads. You're not just thinking about how it supports the strategy statement, but you're talking about how there's a consistent tone and style throughout all the different pieces and how they all complement one another and work together to support each other. When you are trying to make the case for all your tactics, it's really important that you're not just trying to sell your audience, in this case, selling your teacher, on the idea that your tactical ideas are so great. Really what you want to do is you want to keep going back to that strategy and say, hey, I've got a really strong strategic approach. And what's great is this particular tactic does a good job of illuminating that, bringing that to life. And that's how you really do a great job with an integrated marketing plan. You show how all these tactical ideas, as creative as they may be and worthy of merit on their own, what they really are they're just in service to the bigger picture. And that's why we really want you to do that strong objective and strategy work up front. When you are actually putting together your presentation, whether for a client or just for a class, you want to think about how do I build a case. So you are not going up there and just providing information. Let's do this, 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 this. But you're trying to convince your stakeholders, the audience, this is why we should approach it this way. This is why this is the right approach. You really want to adopt that persuasive narrative, and that you are building a case about this is the right way to spend your marketing dollars. So as you're going through your ideas, you're going to list the tactics one by one. Start with the most core central ideas. So I worked for traditional advertising agencies. It made a lot of sense for us to start with a television ad, because the television ad would often be the first thing that would debut. It'd be the first tactic. It was generally the most expensive. We paid the highest amount of money to creatives working in the TV ad. And that was because they were really kind of doing a lot of the core work. They were kind of setting the tone. It was a lot easier then to adapt less expensive advertising around the really complex strategic work we did around the television campaign. That would be kind of the heart of the integrated campaign. Doesn't mean it have to be TV. It can be anything. You just have to kind of think, what's that initial tentpole kind of activity that's going to be the center of your integrated plan. As you're putting together a presentation with class, you really want to show some visualization, because just putting up some bullet points on the slide and say, hey, we're going to do this, 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 it's kind of hard to imagine what is that tactic actually going to look like. So even if you haven't mocked up your creative yet, maybe you can look for similar visuals that will give a sense of the style that you're going to be looking for. Anything that can kind of make it come alive, it's marketing, right? That's what helps your audience understand what you're trying to envision with your tactics. We really want to see details, because you can just say, hey, we're going to build a TV ad. Oh, we're going to do banner ads. But if we don't have some specific detail, most likely it's not doing a very good job of showing how it connects back to what you were arguing earlier in objectives and strategy. And that's really important. And that's what we're talking about here in the last point. It's just everything needs to be justified. You don't do a certain tactic just because, oh, we should have a TV, we should have a print, we should have a search. No, you should have it because it really supports your mission of what you committed to with your objectives and strategy. So we've been talking about tactics. There's so many different ways you can go with this, but one thing that when I'm thinking about what have students done well or not done so well in their presentations is including measurement. A lot of times I'll see no measurement whatsoever, which is a very dangerous choice if you're trying to get a good grade in your assignments. Or I've seen one slide where all the measurement for all tactics can conveniently be slapped together on one slide. It doesn't work that way. Each tactic has got a unique approach using different marketing initiatives across different marketing platforms, using different publishers. Each one is unique and different, and so it makes sense that they're going to have unique different measurements. So this is why when we were talking earlier in objectives, we didn't suggest coming up with the tactics for the promotional objectives. We wanted to wait until we got to the tactics and figure out what is appropriate. So here's your chance. You just talked about what you're suggesting with a particular tactic. Now explain what data is relevant for that. And you want to be really specific on this. You really want to think about what kind of key performance indicators are really going to show that you successfully met those objectives that you stated way back early in the process. You should have a timeline for completing each of these, so we know when we're going to expect results. You shouldn't just throw out a metric type, such as a conversion rate. You really should define, what does that mean to you? You should set a number. We're hoping to meet that. That often involves establishing a benchmark number. And in order to get that benchmark, you can look back at what have you previously done before as a company, and use that information to help you establish what might be an appropriate goal for this particular campaign. I think it's also important to make sure you talk about cost. Doing marketing is not inexpensive. It's a real cost to companies. So as you're going through each tactic, you know that not every tactic is probably going to be adopted. Someone's going to say, yeah, I like that, maybe that a little bit less. It really makes it easy for your stakeholders to kind of make some decisions and pipe in about, I like this idea, but that cost is too prohibitive. Putting the cost on the slide, it helps get the stakeholders to take action sooner. And that's ideal, right? Because you want to move forward with this campaign. You might have to sacrifice one of your beautiful children, one of these different tactics that you thought was going to be a great idea. But giving them this information is forcing the issue and say, hey, let's start, cherry picking right now what we're going to do with this campaign. You want to consider how the cost might or might not be reflected in the measurement, because you might be measuring other things that have nothing to do with whether you can recoup the cost in this. Really what matters with the measurement is, did it successfully meet those objectives that you came up with in the original research, translating into what we need to do as a company. If you cannot talk about how you are going to measure things. If you are unable to figure out a good measurement for that tactic, well, that is a wonderful warning sign that you may not have thought through this enough, or maybe this idea is just not ready. It's not going to be an appropriate fit where you're trying to do. So don't get frustrated. Just use that as useful information to help you figure out, like, maybe I need to go back to the drawing board. Is there a way I can tweak this and reconsider? All right, well, hopefully this video and all the previous videos have been helpful for you and given you some ideas about how you can go about doing your integrated marketing plan. Again, you can always reach out to me on the contact information at the beginning of the video. And if you got any questions about our program, please do contact Christy Wilson. Her contact information here is at the end. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for participating, and have a great day.